Welcome back to The Explainer. So today, we're going to be diving into something honestly pretty wild. We're looking at how a seemingly ancient, 8-year-old smartphone lawsuit is literally dictating the future of computing right in front of our eyes.
Okay, let's just start with the number. 4.1 billion euros. That is a massive, staggering amount of money. It's the final antitrust fine the EU's top court ordered Google to pay on July 2nd, 2026, over its Android practices. It's still one of the biggest competition penalties ever slapped on a tech giant.
But here's the thing. This massive fine, it's not really just about smartphones or open source code. There's this brilliant analogy from the case that hits the nail on the head. It goes, the free thing is often the entrance hall. The toll booth is somewhere deeper inside. This whole thing is fundamentally about human psychology and the quiet, almost invisible power of software distribution.
So that brings us to the real mystery we're unpacking today. Why on earth did an 8-year-old lawsuit just completely rewrite the future of AI? Like, how does a penalty over old mobile phone contracts ripple straight into the artificial intelligence revolution? To figure that out, we really have to look at what actually went down in the courts.
Which takes us to Section 1, the 4.1 billion euro verdict, and the slow grind of traditional antitrust.
So this legal battle dragged on for 8 long years. It kicked off way back in 2018 with the initial EU Commission decision, then hit a general court appeal in 2022 that slightly reduced the fine, and didn't reach a final verdict until 2026. Now, while the courts were doing their thing, meticulously deliberating, the tech market was just compounding at warp speed. This painful, slow grind sets up exactly why regulators today are absolutely terrified of moving too slowly on new tech. By the time a ruling is finalized, user habits are totally baked in, and the market has completely moved on.
Moving on to Section 2, the Android ecosystem bargain. This is all about the gap between open source and controlled distribution.
Let's break down Google's strategy here. Step 1 was offering a totally free open source space, the Android operating system. Sounds great, right? But step 2, to actually get the Google Play Store, which is basically the beating commercial heart of the platform, device makers had to agree to step 3. They had to pre-install Google Search and Chrome. Basically, the open source code was just a vehicle used to guarantee these key apps were front and center.
And we can look at this completely impartially. On one hand, Google has a very valid defense. They created a free, open operating system that democratized smartphones, lowered costs everywhere, and gave us a much-needed counterweight to Apple's iPhone. But on the other hand, the EU found that Google essentially used access to those essential apps to illegally gatekeep adjacent markets, specifically search and browsers. The EU's stance is pretty clear. Doing something pro-competitive in one area doesn't give you a free pass to do anti-competitive gatekeeping in another.
Because here's the crucial reality. A commercially viable Android phone simply requires Google mobile services. Yeah, the core code is open and free, but let's be real, selling a mainstream phone to consumers without that bundle of Google apps, it just isn't a viable business. That commercial bundle, that is exactly where the leverage lived.
All right, Section 3, the power of defaults, or as I like to think of it, the quietest form of market power. The courts recognize some heavy psychology at play here, specifically status quo bias. It's basically a cognitive bias that explains why we heavily prefer things to just stay the exact same, and it is literally the foundation of consumer software distribution. The very first icon you see, or the first search box you use on a brand new device, instantly becomes a habit for billions of people.
Think about it for a second. How often do you actually dig deep into your phone's settings just to change your default browser? There's a massive gap here. Choice, in theory, means, sure, users have the absolute freedom to download whatever alternative apps they want. But choice in practice? Most users never even touch those initial settings. So the EU determined that this behavioral reality basically turns defaults into a massive friction tax on competition.
The mechanics of this leverage are just so subtle. It's the first icon seen, the first account prompted, the first search box used. That entire first-run experience totally routes the user. And every single additional click you need to make to reach a rival product, that's a barrier. And honestly, this isn't even a new concept. If you look back at Microsoft's Internet Explorer battles in the 90s, leveraging the path of least resistance is a huge recurring theme in tech. Dominance is all about owning that very first interaction.
Which brings us to Section 4, the next battleground, AI, moving from mobile phones to intelligent agents. Now this is where things get really wild.
If defaults controlled the smartphone era, who controls AI? This question right here is exactly why regulators are absolutely obsessing over this 4.1 billion euro ruling right now. They are terrified that the exact same distribution playbook we saw with mobile is unfolding again right this very second with artificial intelligence.
Because history is showing us a stunning pattern. In the 1990s, the interface was the desktop, and the gatekeeper tool was Internet Explorer. In the 2010s, the interface was the smartphone, heavily steered by search and Chrome defaults. And now, welcome to the AI era. Tools like Copilot, Gemini, Apple Intelligence, they're being baked straight into our operating systems. Just like we saw with browsers, any rival AI tool is going to have to fight a massive uphill battle from the very first boot screen.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that a default AI assistant can be just as consequential as a default browser. That first-run experience when you boot up a new PC or phone, that is incredibly lucrative real estate. Whoever owns that boot sequence, whoever gets that default AI integration, could secure an unshakable market advantage before you, the user, even realize you have other options. And that brings us to Section 5, the global ripple effect. We're talking about the shift from punishments to rulebooks. See, this ruling isn't just wrapping up an old lawsuit. It's kickstarting a massive shift in how global tech is regulated. For a long time, we relied on retroactive enforcement, years of litigation, endless appeals, and delayed penalties for stuff that happened ages ago. But traditional antitrust is just way too slow for tech. So now, regulators are shifting to proactive rulebooks. The EU is actively taking the precedent from this Android case and using it to fuel the Digital Markets Act, or DMA. Instead of waiting 10 years to punish a company after a monopoly is already established, they're imposing upfront obligations on tech gatekeepers to actually design fair access right into their platforms from day one. This is creating an entirely new regulatory reality across the globe. We're talking upfront obligations, mandatory choice screens, making it way easier for you to change your defaults, and way less aggressive App Store tying. And this isn't just Europe, by the way. We're seeing cross-border regulatory convergence in places like the US and India, too. Basically, legal review isn't just some after-the-fact compliance department for big tech anymore. It's now an active, everyday constraint on how products are architected and platforms are designed.
So, as we wrap this up, I want you to keep this thought in mind. The first thing on your screen is rarely just the first thing on your screen. Defaults are not just natural facts of the universe, right? They are highly calculated, heavily monetized business decisions designed by the companies that profit immensely from them.
Which leaves us with this final, absolutely critical question. So who decides what you see first? Next time you fire up a new phone, or open a new browser, or talk to a new AI assistant, take a second to question your own digital agency. It might just make you reconsider every default setting in your life. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it completely changes how you look at the screens in front of you. Catch you next time.